pre-recorded interviews, behavioral tests. Your resume has to fit this cookie cutter mold. You don't know what they're going to do with that information and how they're going to judge you, whether it's based on what you have on your resume or your looks.
The next time you apply for a job, it might not be a human being deciding whether you get it or not. Instead, it could be an algorithm. For some, artificial intelligence, or AI, is an efficient way to remove human bias and discrimination in the hiring process. But others fear that AI-driven hiring tools reflect the same biases as the humans who built them. So, should algorithms be used at all in the recruitment process? And if they are, how can we ensure that they don't worsen employment discrimination? Algorithms are already deeply embedded in all of our lives. They can decide our educational prospects, or determine our health needs. They can even suggest our ideal life partner. And now they're also helping decide whether or not we get employed.
That training data helps the machine to learn and it sort of helps to make these predictions.
AI hiring tools are now big business. In 2019 alone, the global market for artificial intelligence in recruitment was valued at $580 million. From low-skilled jobs to senior positions, companies from across the board have started using AI to determine who to hire. So, if you're applying for a sought-after position, a machine might have written the job post, targeted that job specifically to you, scanned your CV for keywords, scheduled your interview, and monitored your facial movements, tone of voice, and speech patterns. These are just a few of the tools being used. Kevin Carballo, who we met at the start of the video, says he's experienced a few.
It's like shooting in the dark while being blindfolded. You don't know what you're going to get called back, and you don't know if your resume is going to fit the parameters that they're looking for.
Companies selling AI tools for recruitment market their products as a time and resource-saving device. They also pledge to help eliminate recruiters' unconscious biases. But for tech researchers, more often than not, algorithms mirror them. So how does that work? The first issue is the diversity of developers, from ethnicity to gender and socioeconomic background.
There is such a lack of inclusion of diverse populations to begin to even develop these tools. And then the codification that is intrinsic in the models themselves. Those are issues that create biases in the process, even before you begin to talk about the data.
This can lead to data that favors or skews away from groups.
The past has not been great for women in employment. It has not been great for ethnic and racial minorities. It has not been great for those non-binary or LGBTQIA people.
Which leads to the problem that
an AI, a machine learning method more precisely, is just not going to have that information with the help of which it will be able to figure out that somebody who's atypical, an individual with a disability, for example, or somebody else who belongs to an intersection of multiple marginalized groups, like African American women, would do well if we gave them a chance.
different tools can show bias in different ways.
Oftentimes the application or the algorithm may not necessarily recognize me, not me as a person, but Black and brown people in general.
With video analysis tools, we're also concerned about, for example, whether people are going to be keeping eye contact with the camera. Now think about somebody who's blind. They're not even going to know where to look. Think about somebody who is a woman and who was brought up in a conservative culture where they're told to look down, where they're not told to keep eye contact, right? How will that reflect on their job prospects?
Kevin, who was the first in his family to attend university, says he's lost track of the number of times he's applied for a job only to receive an automated rejection email.
It wasn't a concern at first, but then you start asking yourself, like, why am I not getting a call back? And maybe changing things here and there a bit. Eventually, it started making a difference. So you kind of see, like, maybe there is some type of prejudice, some type of bias when it comes to, the labor market.
So should we be using algorithms at all?
It depends very much on which areas we're talking about, and it depends very much on whether human intervention is possible. That's the biggest risk right now that I see. No one has any idea about how these decisions are being made, how these algorithms are working, and yet there's a rush to celebrate that now things are automated and things are moving much faster.
AI is not magic. It's not going to know what you mean. It's not going to just work. We really have to check whether these tools work.
The use of artificial intelligence in recruitment throws up a number of ethical questions. From the US to EU countries, governments are discussing regulations aimed at preventing biases in AI. In New York City, a piece of legislation is being proposed that would require companies to undertake audits for bias in their AI tools before they can sell their products.
And it would also require that individuals who are evaluated with the help of algorithmic tools be notified that an algorithm was used to screen them.
They're also looking at the legitimacy of these algorithms in terms of what they measure. So if you're being asked to play logic games or guess, the number of golf balls that fit into a plane for assessing your risk tolerance or your ability to think outside of the box, the legislation in New York is forcing these companies to actually prove that there's some correlation between the types of testing and whether it has any relation to candidates' abilities to do the job.
But what would a bias audit actually mean?
What are the downstream and upstream impacts of doing the audit? And what are the measures? What are the key performance indicators that are being assessed that could drive the change that is needed with these applications?
It's not just an issue for minoritized people or people at the margins somehow who might find themselves in an uncomfortable situation regarding their data because cameras don't work on their skin tone or something like that. This is a massive issue for everyone who has data that is online, which most of us do, and who is interested in fairness and transparency and accountability for the decisions that get made.